Hey, Internet. So, as you can see, studio is still being worked on. I built this really funny phone rig, which I'll actually post a pic of in the community tab. I think you'll get a kick out of it. So, the room's not even finished yet. I don't even have ceilings in here. I got this big bed sheet behind me. That's what we're going to shoot in front of for now. We'll keep working on it. We'll get there. Today, I want to talk about crafting systems in games. I'd like to make this something of a series, so we're going to talk about individual game craft systems. I'd like to get into really dissecting them and seeing how they work. This video is kind of more about games that influenced me and my art and my crafting. So in the future, we'll do dedicated videos for each game we discuss and dissect each craft system. I'll be comparing those craft systems to how those crafts function in real life, in a real shop environment. And the goal of this series is to come up with an ideal crafting system, at least for me. By the end of this video, we'll have a bit of a list and we'll start keeping track. And every episode, we'll do some more. We'll add some more to the list, take some out, see what works and what doesn't. Now, this video is a collection of opinions. I'm just talking about my own experiences. When we get into really dissecting other games and do dedicated videos, I'll add gameplay videos and screenshots and all that kind of stuff. This isn't that. So if you like the video, hit like. If you want more, hit subscribe. It really does help. Now, anyone who knows me knows I really love steampunk. I have all my life. It's been an obsession. Now, I blame that obsession on a game I used to play a lot called Arcanum. Now, if you follow Timothy Kane on YouTube, he talks a lot about his work on the game. Go check it out if you're interested. It's really cool. He goes into a lot of depth on this topic. For me, I'm just going to talk about the crafting system. Now, it's an isometric game. The system didn't have a ton of variety. It wasn't too complex either. This made it really easy to get into. It may have been a little too simple today, but at the time, it was perfect. The game had very few junk items. There was very little clutter. Almost everything had a use. That was really helpful. It did a really good job of not clogging up your inventory. I find it tough to go through lists of items in your inventory and just trying to look for what you need. So having it cut down and simple is great. Every item either had a use on its own or was usable in multiple fields and multiple crafts, which was really handy. Now, each point you put into each craft skill unlocked a new item. This really motivates you to kind of work for your skills and keep you going. The items unlocked were almost immediately all useful, rather than just being ingredients or something that you could use later on. You really got value out of every point you spent in the game and every craft skill that you invested in. Proficiency in craft skills also integrated and stacked well with other skill checks. It fit really well into the game. It wasn't just a system sort of tacked on to add new features. Another isometric game, much like Arcanum, was Ultima Online. The setting was different, but I also played a lot of this game around the same time I was really into Arcanum. You had a lot of freedom to build your characters, and a lot of freedom to do whatever you really wanted in the world. There were tons of role-playing opportunities in Ultima. I should say, it's still running. The game itself advertised that you could just take crafting skills as a character and be a merchant traveling around making things for other players. You could really roleplay with your crafting skills. You didn't have to be a fighter or a mage or a monster hunter. You could even be a detective. Forensics was one of the skills. Now, Ultima Online was my first introduction to doing character rebuilds. Skills aren't fixed. You can untrain one skill to train up another. It's really good, again, for role-playing, which is kind of the purpose. It is online, so you're going to be doing a lot of role-playing. You can really specialize in the game, but you could also make it as a generalist, putting a little bit here and a little bit there into your skill sets. This is something that's actually punished a lot in modern games. Gathering basic materials wasn't too difficult. However, if you wanted really specialized crafting materials, you had to face some tough encounters. It kept things interesting and challenging. You were able to create items that were useful to other players, from armor and weapons to even spells and spell scrolls. You could find a niche as a crafter and really fit into a group pretty well. Like with Arcanum, crafting skills in Ultima integrated really well with other skills. For instance, if you were a lumberjack, you actually got a boost to your ability to cut trees by training in axe combat. Because there was so much variety, players really had the opportunity to engage with the system or not if they didn't want to. You could be a fighter and take no crafting skills and just buy your gear straight up from other players. It was really handy. You could also really go to bat creating economies and markets, things that kept everyone interacting with each other in new and interesting ways. Now, UO also had a build system. The way the build system worked was you would buy a deed for a foundation, and you would place that foundation down, and you could build within that foundation. Now, this was pretty restrictive, but it was done to prevent overcrowding, which if you ever played Ultimate, you know still happens. You can still get pretty creative though. All in all, the game gave you endless variety when it came to integrating crafting skills into your character build and your role playing. Now, the world of Guild Wars is one of my favorite settings. I'm going to talk about Guild Wars 2 here specifically. I both like and dislike its crafting system, but we'll talk about that and you'll see what I mean. I'm not trying to denigrate the game in any way. I still play it myself quite often. Now, training a craft skill in Guild Wars 2 requires cranking out a lot of kind of useless low-tier items. You can scrap some of those to get materials back, which is helpful, but it's still a bit of a grind. That's one of the things that I really don't like, just filling up your inventory with stuff that you're not going to use, and some of it you can't even sell. One thing that really kept you crafting is that getting good at crafting in a particular skill is the only way to actually unlock certain powerful items or visual effects. It motivates you to get good at a specific set of skills. This isn't a game you can be a generalist in, though. You have to specialize, and you can only specialize in a couple of skills. Another problem is you sort of have to figure out what your goal is, what you want to craft, the powerful item that you want ahead of time, and you're going to spend a lot of your crafting time focusing specifically on that goal. It's going to influence what skills you train. It's going to influence what encounters you go for. You're going to be doing a lot of challenges and getting trophies that all work towards that one goal. Again, the problem with the junk items in Guild Wars 2 is you have pretty limited inventory space unless you're willing to spend money, which there's nothing wrong with doing, but if you just want to play the game on its own, you're going to fill up those inventory and bank slots really quick. Now, you kind of have to hold on to a lot of items that really have limited or no use in your inventory. These things are items that you need to work towards the rare item that you're really looking for at the end of your crafting tier. For instance, you might need a trophy from a particular boss to make a super rare sword. You kind of have to keep it in your inventory along with all your other stuff while you do all the other things to get to that point. And it might take days, it might take weeks. Some of these items take a long time to craft. All that said, you have to go through a lot of challenging gameplay and do some really fun events. You got to do some interesting boss fights to get things which keeps you exploring, and it really does keep things interesting. You're not just standing in front of a forge with a hammer for hours on end. Now, material nodes, like in other MMOs, respawn daily. High-level nodes move around from map to map and location to location. This keeps you moving around and engaging with new events and parties and getting into all kinds of adventures. It really does keep things interesting. One thing I really don't like about Guild Wars 2 is the daily limits. Some items and materials you can only get a certain number of times per day. Now, when I start a project, I like to be able to keep working towards it. I find these limits really cumbersome. The craft system does feel a little like an afterthought, but there's a lot to do, and you're never going to be bored if you really like spending time in the setting. Now, I don't have a lot to say about World of Warcraft. I didn't play it for that long. One thing that stood out to me is the ability to make items that allow you to change how you play. Like potions of water breathing, for instance, in Classic WoW. This is something I look for in all crafting systems. Using crafting to overcome mechanical challenges rather than combat or magic feels good. I like that a lot. This craft system fits well into the game, so I can't say I have any complaints about it. Now, we're not getting to this list without me mentioning Minecraft. We'll do a dedicated video to both craft and build systems in Minecraft, but today I want to talk specifically about the build system here. The ability to kind of build anything you want really let me be creative. Creativity is what I really look for in a build system. You could make these massive cathedrals. I also want to be able to make naughty, rude sculptures to slag off my friends. So, bit of both there. Minecraft is great for that. If you like making things and you have anxiety between projects like I do, it can really fill the void. However, it can become a bit of a coping mechanism and be a bit of an obsession. I'll admit to that. Be sure to pick your head up from time to time and take a breath. Now, besides steampunk, I also love space. Let's talk about No Man's Sky. You can craft items directly in your inventory. This is really good for quickly making what you need and then going out exploring, which is the point of the game. Building's really easy and you can get really creative. You can build intricate bases on your freighter. You can make massive underwater cities. Shipbuilding's a pretty recent addition. It has some good elements. You have to be at a space station to do it. You can upgrade your ship's equipment in the field, though. It's not overall a bad system. It could use some work to be more customizable and give a bit more freedom of design. It's an exploration game that handles building and crafting pretty well, in my opinion. So, for this one, I'd like to talk about two games at once. Nightingale and Valheim. Now, these games are both in alpha, and I look forward to seeing how they evolve both during and after those periods. These games have somewhat similar crafting systems. Their differences and similarities make for an interesting side-by-side comparison. That's kind of why I'm putting them together. Now, both games require workbenches and workstations. More on that in a moment. But one other thing in common is that you can apply augments to your workstations by building items nearby. This can change the aspects of how these benches and these crafting stations work. Now, Valheim makes this system a requirement to get higher tier items. Nightingale's a little more interesting with it. Augments increase resource yield, reduce crafting time, again, more on that, and boost item attributes. You can build a workshop around crafting a specific item. You can build an armory, you can build a clothing shop that maxes out the stats on each of those individual items. It gives you a lot of freedom, I think. Both games give you a reason to keep expanding your workshop in creative ways to make room for new equipment. This really lets you create interesting environments that also have a use beyond just being pretty. In Valheim, you have to progress through the story to unlock higher tier items. Nightingale does this too, but you have to use your craft skills to complete quests, and use your ability to build to solve challenges, and to help NPCs for rewards by building their estates. You can help create defenses to defend fortresses and castles, all kinds of stuff that really integrates that system effectively in other ways besides just crafting equipment. Now, both games suck at inventory, in my opinion. You have limited space, and you have limited carry weight. Now, these systems are alright for immersion and story reasons, but they're really annoying if you're like an ambitious builder who likes to create all kinds of stuff really quick. Nightingale does allow more control over your weight limit through item augmentations and magical items and things like that, but I'd say the system still needs work. Both games have another feature that I find immersive, but annoying, and that's crafting timers. Valheim primarily uses crafting timers for refining higher tier materials like iron and copper. You have to run it through a furnace, it takes time to heat up. It makes sense, still a bit annoying, but it fits well into the system. Nightingale has crafting timers on everything. It's really annoying if you want to make a big build like me, and it can be really annoying if you're a crafter who likes to work on a project. Now, the craft timers can be mitigated by sleeping, although this is still really annoying if you have to do it between every crafting step, or if there are other players on the servers and you all have to sleep at the same time. Both games require benches and craft stations, as I mentioned before. Nightingale lets you build anywhere and use benches to refine materials. Valheim needs all building and crafting to be done within a radius of a build station, meaning you have to keep building or moving benches to create complex structures. It really slows down building, and in my opinion, it's not worth the gain. And here's a feature I really like. Nightingale's build system makes you hold down a button before you're able to delete a placed object. It's a really good feature. I get really twitchy with my mouse. It's really easy to misclick and accidentally delete something that you didn't mean to. I'm a huge fan of this feature, and I think it should feature in all build systems. Nightingale also lets you customize the properties of items by changing the materials they're made of. This is pretty immersive and allows for a lot of possibilities for unique builds. Ultima actually has this too, which I talked about earlier. It can make each item unique in different ways, or you can max out an item for a particular build. Now, I'd like to put an honorable mention on this list. We won't go too deep into this one, but the system's fairly well designed for the setting, and I want to acknowledge that. I might do a dedicated video on it later. Witcher 3 has a craft system that suits the character well, and you don't really have to spend all your time on it, which is good in a game where there's so much else to do. However, you can also spend more time on and master it, which can give you an advantage. It's a good overall design. I'll do a dedicated video, as I said. That's all I really got on Witcher 3's crafting system for now. So, that leads us to start our ideal crafting system. Let's look at what we've learned from the other games on this list and see what we can come up with. 1. No junk. First point to consider, we should limit junk and clutter. Each item you craft should be useful on its own, either as a tool or something that can be easily sold to other NPCs. You shouldn't be having to destroy items or fill inventory space with useless trash. When you put points into your crafting skills, you should learn new recipes at every level. This keeps you motivated and you don't feel like you're spending junk points. You know, like when you have to choose spending a point on a skill for a boost, but no really cool new thing. Or you can spend a skill on a lower tier skill that'll give you a little bit of a boost, but you get a cool new thing with it, a cool new ability or a cool new item. You should always get a cool new thing, cool new ability, cool new item. Grinding basic craft materials should be relaxing and fun. Higher tier materials should require higher tier challenges though. Crafting shouldn't just be about making new gear. It should be useful in solving puzzles and quests and resolving disputes. It should play a part in the story. The system shouldn't feel like it's just bolted on to add a new feature to the game. You should be able to craft items to help your fellow players out, or items that they can buy from you for money or trade for help in a quest. The system shouldn't just be there to make new items for yourself. You should be able to craft items which alter the way your character interacts with the world, alter the way skills work, overcome mechanical challenges. That gives you the ability to be creative in your approach to problems. Building should be free enough to allow you to express yourself. Limits should be put in place only to help with immersion of oneself or others. Challenges should be creative and not just things that add a burden to you. Last but not least, there should be safeguards against destroying built items, especially if they're going to be annoying or difficult to rebuild. Well, it's the end of the list for today. Should give us a good start to crafting a system that we can be proud of, hopefully. At least I can be proud of. Hopefully you guys will join me and be proud of it as well. There are going to be a lot of different opinions on this topic, and that's cool. Everyone plays a little bit different. If you have suggestions for specific games you'd like to discuss, please email me. I'm open to that kind of thing. If you have anything you'd like to add to this list or anything you disagree with, please let me know in the comments down below. I'll try and go in and answer comments when I can. I may do a live stream too soon if I can get everything set up and working. I'm not good at tech, as you can tell, but it might be a little bit, but we'll get something on the go. So I'll see you guys in next week's video. Stay safe. Bye, Internet.